and I just let him know.
So,
Sure I did.
Yeah, it's okay.
Come down for yes.
Messed up everybody with me. Tripod.
Get in it and stay there. Okay, there you go.
I wondered about that. Yeah, well, and like Eddie speaks loudly. Some of them will speak louder.
an email, yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably already written. Oh, well, yeah.
Pretty good. Uh-oh, I'm not surprised. I slept pretty good last night, so yeah, that makes a difference. I was telling Lisa, I said, I just hurt every day, it's just a matter of degrees, so.
Leave here too.
Where are the microphones?
Those were renovated.
Not tonight.
Not tonight? Not tonight.
Those are. Over the ceiling.
Kind of looks like it. Actually ended up going, I think, pretty well. At first, the microphone, she's like, no, she rolled her eyes.
And I was glad.
But you know, that's too bad. At the beginning, she ended up using it later. But at the beginning, she was
All right, it's 5:30. I want to call this meeting to order.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Silent roll call for us, please.
Okay.
Only item up that we have is resolution number 11-2024.
Do you want staff to speak about it first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Presentation.
So, do you want to lead off, Jeff? So,
Sure.
I mean, I can, or you can, either way. Doesn't matter. Do you want me to start with my conversation this afternoon?
That'd be great.
Okay, so I was able to reach out, what we're gonna talk about tonight, the plan to address, some of the infrastructure concerns surrounding the old middle school property. We'd like to share some of that with you all this evening. And so before I get started, I had a preliminary conversation, earlier today with Mike Godey, who is the chairman of the Bone Break Board of Directors. So again, nothing, no agreements, nothing, just a preliminary conversation about what we as the city are needing to do in order to alleviate some sewer concerns and issues in that neighborhood. And so obviously the Bone Break property is south of the old middle school grounds, and I do have a map that we can bring up. In speaking with Mike, sorry, that's the resolution. I do have his permission to just share with you all that yes, he and I did speak. That doesn't mean it's a commitment, but he understands that we'll be coming forward with a formal request for an easement and to be able to access the grounds to realign a sewer line that runs across their property. So Jeff, I'll let you kind of take that away.
Sure. I'll step up here.
So you need I don't have a pointer. You want to
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So just for orientation purposes, this is Hickory Street and 10th Street, the school property in this area between 9th and 10th.
Could you speak up, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Would you like for me to repeat that? The orientation? Okay. So a project had been identified by a public works staff over a year ago, and there's concerns about some sewer backups, some low-lying areas, potentially some sources of inflow and infiltration down in this area as it crosses the Bone Break property. So we investigated, looked at some of the sources. There's a lot of root intrusion into the manholes, likely throughout the sewer lines themselves, that would likely be causing some backups in that area. Then when we get heavy rains, then that just, makes the issues worse. There's just not, the roots intrude into the manholes, they intrude into the pipe itself, and it just reduces the capacity for sewage and I&I to flow through that pipe. So, again, this is independent of any conversations about this property itself. It was just identified as a concern in the sewer system. So we identified an alternative route that could come in somewhere in this area and bypass this portion of the line and actually replace that line. So as of right now, this is 10th Street. Sewer from the east side of the top of the hill runs down to Hickory, and then all the way down to the bottom of the hill, and then routes all the way over here and then goes that direction.
The pink lines are the sewer lines on
Correct.
this map.
Similarly, on the west side of the top of the hill, the sewer line runs down through here, ties into that same line, and then runs back to the north and on to the wastewater plant. So the section that was identified was kind of the lower area of that line, and so it'd be replaced and bypassed, and that would hopefully resolve any issues that we had in that area. So we put a budget to that project last year, and then we recently refreshed that dollar amount. So it's in the $200,000 range, and that's the project that Sally's talked with the folks at Bone Break, just kind of initiating those conversations. Hopefully we'll be able to work something out to where we could find an acceptable route through that area, gain easement, and be able to make that improvement and improve the sewer flows throughout the area.
So the funding for this realignment of this section of sewer line, that you see kind of cutting diagonally across the bottom of the screen there, the funding for that would be from the COP, a 2017 COP, which is a certificate of participation. It's funding that was established for the round one or phase one upgrades to the sewer treatment plant. So there was additional funding in there specifically for this project. Had been specifically looked at. We had requested previously to make sure that this was okay to use the funding for this project, and we got the go ahead on that. So we have enough funding to cover the cost to do this. And so, like I said, the staff conversation, talking with Jeff, we believe that this eliminating that root-bound section of line will eliminate the sewer flow issues in this neighborhood.
Was there any other concerns with that additional line, Jeff, coming from between 11th and East 10th on the other side of Askew that drops down there? Not the one on Hickory.
On 10th Street?
Yeah, the 565, 563 through that line through there.
Well, that was in situ formed already.
Okay.
That's what, so it's kind of highlighted in yellow. That's what that means. That line has already been in situ formed.
So it's
that's
been cleaned out and lined, and it should not be an issue.
Okay.
So like Jeff stated, this is plan priority number one. Whether any vote, anything happens, this project was number one coming up, so.
Did they give any additional, like a time frame on how long it would take for us to obtain an easement before we start this project? Or that would be up probably to the Bone Break.
Right. I mean, just like through the city, would have to have any easements that we would grant to anyone.
Mhm.
You guys would have to approve, the Bone Break board will have to approve, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And as of right now, it's just kind of a line on a piece of paper, so we still have to go through design, through DNR permitting and bidding, so there's some time, but there'll be several months before it would be built.
Okay.
Were we thinking ballpark 6 months just to get it ready to start construction?
Yeah, I think
Right.
so, and then we just have to see where we're at, what time of year that is, if it's the appropriate time to be digging, because we wanna protect the area and don't want it to be too soft and so forth.
And I know there were some concerns about Hickory Street, potentially being an issue with this. Were you able to talk with staff or figure out any kind of?
So at this point, so we don't have a specific plan, but again, this is all so preliminary. So that you all understand the process. So let's assume, okay, let's just assume that we move forward with tonight's, resolution, okay? And then the next assumption, because this is all based on ifs, right? The next assumption is that the housing authority receives the funding that they're applying for, okay? So then, when they do that, then we've still got plan review. For a project of this size, we would bring this in and I would call in all of our superintendents, I'd call in our, our key staff, and we'd print out plans that the housing authority would submit, and we would all gather around and from all different perspectives, pick it apart. Okay, what does this mean? What are they gonna have to have here? What are they gonna have to have there? So that's part of this whole process, and until we know, because granted, we've seen a preliminary mock-up, but that was thrown together very quickly, and I'm not saying there was anything wrong with it, but that may not be the final plan. So until we know what that final plan is, we don't know where traffic is gonna be dumping out, on what streets, where that's gonna happen. And so all of that will be part of the plan review process that we'll work with, with the housing authority, working through what needs to happen.
And we would have our city engineer, their engineer, along with this project for help with
Well, I mean,
direction.
we'd have to have them in on some of it to make sure that water flows, sewer flows, all of that stuff is going correctly.
So something else I was asked, since Jeff's here, if the board was to approve this tonight, can our system currently right now handle that type of housing? If you added to it,
Sewer system?
yes.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, you have capacity at the wastewater plant. Given this location, it's pretty elevated. Any issues that you have currently are not related to your dry weather flow, your domestic flow that's produced by your users. Any issues that we have are generally related to inflow and infiltration during wet weather. So we definitely have capacity during any kind of dry weather event. 20-some units are, when you look at the flow in that large trunk main down by the creek, the flow that those 20-some units are producing will be a very, very small fraction of the total flow in there. So it's, almost negligible compared to the flow that's going through.
Well, I figured so, I just didn't hurt to ask.
Are there any I&I concerns with the existing line that's on Hickory there, that would go down to the new line, one phone break?
Well, we're in that process right now of looking at the system-wide. We haven't flow metered that particular line for
So
years.
you all may recall, we were awarded a $50,000 grant to do an I&I study. And so that's what Jeff is referring to. Because last year was such a dry year, we had applied for and received from DNR an extension on that. And so that's what he's referring to. We're in that process now. So the last rain events that we've had, they've been down, they've had flow meters in some of those lines. And so we're in that process right now.
And do you care, for the sake of people who maybe knew, myself, explain a little bit of the I&I and the wet weather affecting that, just so people have a clear understanding of
Sure.
what that means?
Yeah, so I&I is an abbreviation for inflow and infiltration. So that's during wet weather, there's different types of extraneous water that can make its way into the sewer lines themselves. So sewer lines are only supposed to carry domestic sewer. We know from the flows at the plant, from what we see, that there are some types of either groundwater, which is the groundwater is what is the infiltration. So that seeps down through the soil, goes through cracks in the pipe. We talked about the root intrusion into the pipe. So root intrusion causes holes, so that gives a source or a conduit for that water to get into the pipe. That's infiltration. You see that a lot down in the low-lying areas. Certainly we see it in clay pipe way more than you do in the newer materials such as PVC. Inflow is a direct flow, so if you think of, if you had downspouts that are tied into a sewer line, into a lateral, storm drains that are at some point somehow got connected to the sanitary sewer, that would be an inflow. So that's where the I&I, inflow and infiltration come from. It's in every system throughout the country. Some are worse than others. I'd say the city of Salem is average. That's something that the city's been working on for many years. And it's not something that you can go solve, with, I don't care how big a pile of money that you had, it's not something you go solve in a specific period of time. It's a trial and error process. It's a go in and flow meter, prioritize areas, CCTV the lines, find sources, fix them, come back, flow meter again, how did we do, go find the next priority. So it's an iterative process to remove that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stand for any questions?
Don't have any questions, but I prepared a statement to share. As many of you are aware, the Salem Housing Authority has made a request to the city for the donation of city property on East 10th Street, commonly known as the old middle school property. And this land donation is important for the Salem Housing Authority's grant application to construct 24 affordable housing units, addressing a pressing need in our community. This proposal was first introduced at our March 12th meeting, and recognizing the short notice given to residents, particularly those that reside in the area, I requested for the resolution to be tabled to afford our community the chance to understand the proposal and voice their opinion, which is tabled at that meeting. We've since heard from many citizens, both during the Salem Housing Authority's presentation at our March 26th meeting and at yesterday's Aldermen meeting, where residents had the opportunity to express their opinions. I have received numerous communications with concerns regarding the aging infrastructure in that area, alongside messages of support for the proposal. We've asked the city and asked the engineer to come tonight to kind of explain the state of our existing infrastructure in that area and the proposed plans in a timeline for the necessary improvements. While I support addressing the affordable housing shortage, I also share the infrastructure concerns. And I want to extend my gratitude to everyone involved in this discussion, including citizens, city staff, the Salem Housing Authority, Archer Elgin, and the Park Board for their input and considerations. In making of our decision tonight, I acknowledge that there may be disappointment for some. Please know that I approach this responsibility with the utmost seriousness, striving to act in the best interest of our community with the information available. So thank you everyone for your input tonight.
Thank you, Alderman. At this time, there's no other further questions from the board. Do I have a motion? Oh. I'll just read the resolution first.
Would you like the whole resolution read or by caption only?
I would read the whole resolution.
Okay. Resolution number 11/2024. A resolution authorizing the donation of property by the city of Salem to the Housing Authority of the city of Salem. Salem Housing Authority for development of affordable housing for the benefit of the community. Whereas rent is the biggest and most important expense each month for most households, and whereas approximately 108 million Americans live in rental home or apartment, and 1/4 of these renters spend more than half of their monthly income on rent payments. And whereas when residents of affordable housing can make their rent payments, they are able to spend more on local purchases such as healthier foods, better access to health care, and spending more at local businesses. And whereas evictions spark a cycle of instability for families, which harms a community's social and economic well-being, which is why affordable housing that leads to housing stability works to prevent evictions no matter the economic climate. And whereas among other factors like income and education, housing is a component that drastically influences a person's physical and mental well-being. So housing is a social determinant of an individual's and a family's health. And whereas individuals in housing that is poorly constructed or maintained may be exposed to lead paint, water contamination, and a slew of other environmental risks that can lead to chronic health issues for children, families, and seniors, which come at enormous and preventable cost to both the residents and their communities. And whereas developing more affordable housing creates more job opportunities by hiring construction companies and creates the need for additional staffing for maintenance and operations once built. And whereas affordable housing provides the chance to decrease childhood poverty and is a foundation for establishing healthy habits and allowing children to focus on their goals and education. And whereas the Salem Housing Authority was created for the developmental of stabilized housing in the community with an initial donation of land by the city for housing development. And whereas the city of Salem approves all Salem Housing Authority board appointments, and whereas the city of Salem, Missouri desires to assist in the development of additional housing options for community members for all of the reasons stated above. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the city of Salem, Missouri as follows. The Board of Aldermen agree that should the Salem Housing Authority secure adequate funding for the construction of 24 affordable housing units, the city of Salem shall donate approximately 4 acres of property known as the old middle school grounds and whose legal description is, section 1/2 lot 2 northwest 1/4 for each purpose. Section 2, if the Salem Housing Authority should not secure funding for construction of the above mentioned housing units, the city of Salem shall retain ownership of the acreage known as the old middle school property. The resolution that shall be in full force and effect from and after the date of its passage and approval.
Thank you. At this time, do I have a motion for resolution number 11-2024?
I make a motion, we approve it.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
This time I will call for the vote. Alderman Whalen,
Yes.
Alderwoman Cisco,
Yes.
Alderman Bolerjack,
No.
and Alderwoman Dent.
No.
Now, at this time, it would be my vote to break this tie, and, I would vote to, go ahead and approve this resolution. This time, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All done, folks.
Unbelievable.
Not really.